Alrighty guys, so today's episode is gonna be a little bit of a tougher one for me. I recently opened up on our Instagram about one of my biggest fears, losing the people that I love. I mentioned how after years of struggling with this negative thought pattern, I finally found a technique that has helped me deal with it much better. Many of you reached out saying you struggled with the same fear and asked me to share this technique. So, here we go. Alright guys, so before I get into it, I want to share my story of why I fear losing the people I love so much. I've tried to tell this story a few times now and it's been a bit harder than expected, but bear with me. So, about 8 years ago, I was lying in bed in a deep sleep and I just remember being woken up by what sounded like loud frantic chatter. I just remember sitting up in bed, not knowing what to do and just feeling scared. I remember watching the shadows moving in the slit of light underneath my bedroom door. Then after a few moments of silence, I just heard this loud wail, and it was honestly the most gut-wrenching sound I've ever heard in my life. Fearing that something that actually happened to my mom, I got the courage to get up, out of my bed, walked to the door, opened it, and I found my mom trying to console a lady who was a close family friend of ours. She had just found out that her 10-year-old daughter had unexpectedly passed away from dengue fever. She was actually on the phone to her daughter when it happened. This girl wasn't like a sister to me, we weren't extremely close, but I spent every summer of my life going back to the Philippines, watching her grow up, teaching her how to ride a bike, teaching her English, and so yeah, it was still a huge shock to me. I still felt the loss greatly, and it just felt so unfair for such a young, innocent girl to be taken like that. Ever since then, I've had this fear of losing the people that I love unexpectedly, and it's just been really hard to get the worst case scenarios out of my head because this moment impacted me so much. Okay, so now you know my story and I've finally composed myself. Let's get into the technique. You can come out.
No, but look, I don't want to. This is your story. I'm just here for moral support. If you need anything, I can be with you. 1, 2, 3. Actually, there is one thing that I think we should say. We are not psychologists. Rach is not a doctor. So what she's going to share is more of her personal experience. But yeah, that's it from me. Then I will let you do. Okay? See you.
But that's a really good point, guys. Take everything we say with a pinch of salt. Alright, so my tactic is...
Before we get into it, I think it would be really beneficial to share how our thoughts work and why some fears are so ingrained in our brain. And if you will allow me, I prepared just a couple of words.
Go on.
Our brain requires a lot of energy to make us function smoothly in the world. This is especially true when we have to concentrate or take big decisions. So to help us store energy, our brain looks to develop efficient ways of operating. One way it does this is through conscious and subconscious processing. Our brain tries to automate much of what we do to save us time and brain energy. That's the brain's subconscious process, which takes care of our basic life functioning and our learned behaviors and habits. Like brushing our teeth or riding a bike, we don't really think about these things. They just happen on autopilot. In fact, up to 95% of all our behaviors and reactions happen at the subconscious level. Our subconscious is also responsible for recording our experiences and knowledge and storing them into memories. They are stored in our brain like screenshots on a laptop. The way we think and feel about these experiences forms a folder in which the screenshots are dropped in. This is how we give meaning to people, objects, or events, and with time our brain develops automated attitudes and habits to react to these folders. For the most part, our subconscious process helps us navigate the world more efficiently. Yet sometimes we might develop unhelpful habits or attitudes that prevent us from achieving our goals, especially when the subconscious has turned childhood memories into habits that no longer serve us in adulthood. This is where more conscious thinking can benefit us. By tapping into the subconscious mind, we become more mindful and we can exercise the power of choice around our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. This is where we can reprogram our subconscious and change our thoughts, attitudes, and habits. While thinking consciously takes more energy, it is how we take greater control of our brain and of our life.
Great! So now that you understand how our thoughts arise and how we can change them, you may leave.
Of course. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
And I'm finally going to get into the technique that I use to help me get over the fear of losing the people that I love. And I promise, this time, it's finally happening. Okay. Put simply, this is a mindfulness technique to change your thinking and train your mind to choose a more positive emotional state of being. But let me break it down. The first step is to identify common thought patterns that trigger negative emotions. So in my case, it would be whenever Stay would leave and have to drive somewhere, I would always think, what if something happens to him on the road? What if another car hits him? He could bash into a tree. Literally anything could happen. And these thoughts would always lead me to a downward spiral into Worryville. So once you've identified a negative thought pattern that you would like to tackle, the next step is to imagine it as a person. Yes, give it a name, a personality. Try to imagine what they would look like. My death-fearing narrative is called Dolores. She wears red lipstick, a fur coat, and is always freaking out about the possibility of people I love dying. How could you let him go? What if something happens to him? I know, annoying as hell. The point of this though is to help you realize that you are not your thoughts. They are simply characters that reside in your mind. Now we move on to step 3. What the heck do you do with Dolores when she comes screaming for your attention? You start by dismissing Dolores. You see, the goal here is not to try and change her. She is who she is. Just like any person you meet on the street, you are not in charge of changing that person, but you can decide if you want to spend more time with them. So if they're not serving you or they're simply stressing you out, kindly send them away. Rage! It's 10 minutes past already. What if he hasn't made it? Okay, you need to call all his friends right now and check if he's made it on time, okay? Okay, Dolores, stop. Can you please just leave? No, really, just leave. Now, if you're anything like me... Rage! Wait! Listen to me, please! Yes, it's been 10 seconds and Dolores is back. Well, that's because she is one stubborn driven by fear. And not just any fear, a fear that has been proven to be a reality based on past experiences. You see, Dolores believes to her core that she's trying to protect me from something that is inevitable. So should I really get mad at someone who's just trying their best to protect me? This leads me on to the next step. Show her compassion. Initially, it was hard. I remember Dolores used to make me so mad. Every time she would pop in, it would be a back and forth yelling match in my mind. I know it, I can feel it, I know it. He's gonna die, I'm telling you, no, listen to me. You know what? You're an annoying please, he's gonna die. And as you can guess, it only made her want to be louder and would just leave me feeling completely drained by the time Stead did come back. What actually made the biggest shift for me was when I started to show Dolores compassion and kindness. First, thank your Dolores for coming to check in on you, but then explain to them that they're not needed right now. Reassure them that you're good, and kindly send them away, just like a neighbor that has come to drop off some freshly baked cookies. Being consistently compassionate to your Dolores is something that takes time to master, especially at the beginning. And look, sometimes dismissing your Dolores isn't enough. If you feel afraid that they're gonna come back every 10 seconds, try to do something to immediately distract yourself after you've dismissed them. Make sure to choose something that fills you with joy. In my case, whenever Stay would leave, it would be immediately getting onto Netflix and binging a romantic comedy or dancing around in my room, and sometimes even going out to see friends when possible. Okay. As annoying as it may be, you just have to accept that it may take you a while to get good at dealing with your Dolores. But the more you show compassion and dismiss your Dolores, the less they are gonna come knocking at your door. Remain calm, just stay strong, and repeat the steps. Eventually, she'll get the message and start visiting you less and less. So now, 8 months down the line from starting this technique, I can confidently say that personifying my negative thoughts has really allowed me to start rewiring my brain so that I can get rid of these negative thoughts much faster. And I'm super happy to say that Dolores comes to visit me much less frequently. So there you have it, guys. I really hope that this technique can help some of you guys dealing with your own negative thought patterns. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next episode, and don't forget, dare to be happy! Woohoo! Suck it up, Dolores.